Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Raymarc Solutions webinar. Raymarc is highly repeatable, best practice IT system management and service delivery. We strive to satisfy the ever-increasing demand to cut cost, increase efficiencies, and align ourselves with the goals of your business. BMC Service Desk Express is sunsetting at the end of 2017, and support will no longer be available. If you have SDE, contact us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278, and we can successfully migrate you to another solution that best fits your business's needs.
Today we're going to show you a brief overview of BMC FootPrints V12 and answer some of your biggest challenges from the webinar sign-up itself. So at the end of our presentation today, we are actually going to answer questions that were asked from Chris from Strum Foods out of Wisconsin, from Mark Wood from American Public University System out of West Virginia, and Eric, University of Nebraska, and obviously Lincoln, Nebraska. And any other questions that you have, we'll try and get those in after answering those biggest challenges at the very end of our presentation today. So utilize the Q&A section of this WebEx to ask your questions, and we'll try to fit in what we can. Now, I want to introduce today's presenter. Our presenter today is Greg Gilda. He's been with FlyCast Partners pretty much since its founding. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Greg Gilda.
All right, Rich, thanks very much for the enthusiastic introduction. And just FYI for everybody, not a single one of those photos was of me. I'm so disappointed. Rich is showing all these photos of smiling people with headsets on.
You're going to have to change that.
I know, right? I'm a smiling person with a headset on, Rich. I feel disappointed that I'm not a part of those pictures. Just kidding you guys. Thanks for taking time out. Thanks for taking time out of your day, everybody, for to listen to me yammer on at you for about the next hour or so as we talk about footprints. As Rich alluded to, we're going to have just a little under an hour to cover all of this, and Footprints is a very potent product. So for us to be able to cover all of this stuff in that little bit of time, obviously we can't get super deep. So we're going to take a very high-level tour of the capabilities of Footprints, and then we'll get around to having Rich go through what those biggest challenges are. We try to pick those based on general applicability and kind of the overall trend in people asking for those kinds of questions to be answered. So we want to make sure that we can cover off on all of your biggest challenges as best we can. Now let me level set here. Footprints is, and always has been since its introduction, a web-based solution, which means there is no client, right? I'm looking at this in Chrome in this particular case, or if we look at it from our customer perspective with their own portal and their own configuration. Customers can see it, of course, in their own way. This is being viewed in Internet Explorer. But it doesn't really matter what browser you have, if you're using Project Spartan or Edge or whatever Microsoft is now naming their former Internet Explorer, or if you're using Safari or any other web browser. As long as the browser supports HTML5, which means as long as it's been made in the last 5 years or so, you'll have no trouble displaying footprints, and that means you have no trouble interacting with it either. No need to have a client on any of those endpoints. We also use a codeless architecture, which means nobody scripts anything in Footprints, right? There's no language. Nobody's writing Java code furiously behind the scenes. There is no code to test. Everything is done in Footprints through a point-and-click interface, which makes getting access to its capabilities easier for you. Nobody wants to acquire a solution like this to manage your ITSM or other pieces of your infrastructure or business process. Nobody wants to have a tool that they have to have that much overhead in, right? I don't want to have to pay somebody full-time to babysit my solution. So Footprints is codeless so that you can take action on your own as new business needs or challenges arise. You have the ability to turn Footprints into that blank management process and make it realize those forms or those workflows. Because Footprints, above all, is an extremely potent workflow engine. In fact, 80% of the customers who use this tool worldwide, and there's over 2,000 companies who do, they're using it for things that aren't even IT. And IT isn't being managed by them because Footprints does workflow so powerfully. And it does that with a concept that is really unique in the industry from an ITSM perspective, and that is it uses a concept called a workspace. Now, a workspace is best thought of as a little factory. Right? If I wanted to build a factory that made razor blades, I would buy all the equipment inside of it for cutting steel and sharpening it and turning it into razor blades at the back end so that Gilda could sue me later for selling razor blades, right? Or maybe I would create a factory that made, wooden planks, and that would be my output. No matter what the factory was, if I wanted to construct one, I would have all the stuff inside it that I needed to make the output what my factory was intended to produce. Footprints workspaces are exactly that. A workspace is really the collection, and I just clicked on an incident record here. It's really the collection of all the stuff that you need in your process factory. I'm going to roll my dashboard out of the way here too, so that you can gather the information and move that process along. These workspaces, just like factories, can be tweaked and tailored by you. If you own the factory, you can bring the equipment in that makes the stuff you want. You have the workspaces, and as many as you'd like in Footprints, so you can use them to access whatever capability or functionality your organization wants, whether it's incident management or change management or typical requests of that nature, or whether you're managing things that are more esoteric from an IT perspective, like, hey, I want to manage facilities requests and capture all that information, or maybe I'm doing legal investigations, or maybe I'm processing security requests so that I can grant security access to specific systems, right, and pick my company and my employee job position and what building access they need. All of that capability is granted to you in workspaces in Footprints, and you can have as many of them as you want. So that unlike other tools where you have to purchase modules to make it work for facilities, right? Where's your facilities module? No such a thing like that in Footprints. A workspace can become whatever kind of factory you want it to be able to manage. You can use any functions inside that workspace that you want, all the automations and assignments, all the notifications, and all done through a point-and-click interface. So that way each of these process factories can work the way you need it to work for your business. And because the tool is codeless, there's never a need for anyone to script anything inside of Footprints. It's all done point and click. Now, we can obviously take incidents. You're going to watch me type for a few seconds here. Capturing any kind of record involves putting the details in front of the person who's going to be entering the data, whether that person is your technician, as in my case, or whether that person is your customer, so that they can gain access to the tool as well. Customers are free in Footprints, so you can have as many of them as you'd like. There's no charge per customer. They expect your business to grow, and it should. So you want to add more internal or external customers either way. And there's no charge to have them access the tool directly, no charge to have them interact with the product, certainly no charge to have them call you or to have them email you, which we also use as a way of accepting tickets in Footprints. We'll talk a little bit more about this customer interface as we go. But really, we want to give your customers the opportunity to interact with you in a way that makes sense for your business. So whether that's emailing you, whether it's calling you, and obviously note to self, if hair on fire, do not email the fire department, call the fire department because they'll come put it out faster. But if there are things that you want to have requests done through email, just send in the request, the system processes it automatically, notifies the customer automatically, and can even be used to keep your vendors in the loop as you're working with them. So Footprints can certainly allow customers or your technicians to interface via email or directly inside the product. Customers are free, and only your technicians, the folks who are actually providing services for someone else, would have any license cost inside of Footprints. That way, the people who get assigned to tickets and to do work, whether it's in facilities or in human resources or any other process you have, can use the tool to best effect. So I'm going to go ahead and put my information in here. You can see me type, as I said. We can link directly to your Active Directory system to pull back customer data or details, or we can link to a SQL source, or we can link to a Footprints address book like I've done. But in any case, you can gain access to all of the folks and all of the sources of truth in your organization about who people are, what access they have, etc. In this case, I'm just going to link to myself, include my detail on the record. It's copied my information in. It's also giving me the opportunity to see me as a customer record. And I can now, as my IT staff, take a peek, see how I look, see what information may be added about me, all the detail about me, and all of the links to every ticket I've ever opened in the history of me. So now I can see all the stuff I've ever asked for. If I'm calling about something that I've already done or already been questioning, I can easily have my staff look up that information and find out just what history Greg has had in the system. Change requests, service requests, regular old tickets, everything that you need can be out here so that everything Greg's done inside of Footprints will have a trail and a record. And it even allows me to see that information as an impact analysis so I can understand the relationship between Greg and his tickets, which sounds like a bad soap opera, right? The continuing saga of Greg and his tickets. But Greg actually has a relationship to like 75 different tickets inside the system, and I can even see that as a visual representation. Note, this is not my shadow either, so just saying. So Footprints lets you create records that have relevant information in them and lets you gain access to that relevant info no matter where it lives in your system. Important because we don't do work in silos, right? We touch other parts of our organization. We get data from multiple places. Sometimes we involve multiple teams or multiple processes. And this is really where Footprint shines. So no matter what the organizational needs are, a workspace can be constructed, a process factory can be constructed to help cover that functionality for you so that you don't have to worry about how disparate or far-flung your organizational requirements might be. A workspace can be designed in Footprints with a simple point-and-click interface, and we'll talk about that, so that you can make those processes a reality. And honestly, in most tools, when you want to do that, you're calling the vendor of the tool or getting a developer on the hook or both so that somebody can spend development hours tweaking code to make the tool work. Who wants to do that, right? Who wants to wait that much time for it to happen when you can point and click your way to the functionality you like right inside the tool, which is really how these workspaces were built. And we'll talk a little more about that too. I'll put in my short description, help me. That's really useful. But honestly, a lot of times customers will send you emails that look exactly like this, right? Move the ticket through its life cycle, any life cycle you want. And in fact, you can ensure that tickets that you create do not jump the shark, do not move ahead, do not pass go until they're entitled to. I just wanted to show you that we can, of course, give you access to all of your statuses or lock them down so that the ticket cannot move beyond its current state unless certain actions are taken. That way, the process happens the way you want it to happen, and you're not being forced to live the life that the tool dictates to you, right? So I'll go ahead and put my help me in here too, because what fun is it to watch me type, really? Now, because I've linked me to the record, Footprints has pulled back information about my particular asset. I'm on a virtual machine here, guys. As you can probably see, I'll slide it over. I'm running it on my Mac laptop as we talk. So you can tie Footprints in with a product that used to be called Footprints Asset Core, now called BMC Client Manager, to return asset information, and we can certainly talk more about this product on a different session. But this gives you the ability to start taking action against 80% of the reason customers call you, right from inside the ticket, instead of having to wander over to their desktop or go to cross town to Starbucks or go to the other office, because we can take all of these actions, remote controlling the machine, reviewing its file system, etc., even using this ticket to spearhead the installation of software in an automated way, no matter where that endpoint is. It doesn't even have to be on my network. It can be in a hotel in Guam, and I can still reach that endpoint and still control it and still send it software. So this capability, inherent in the Footprints product, it ties into that solution, BMC's Client Manager, so that you can have full two-way communication. It's something that you may be interested in hearing a little more about. We can certainly talk about that in another session. The source for your info, your contact method, categorization, any fields that you wish to include in Footprints, any way you want your factory to work. Right? Whatever quality controls you want to put in or whatever data points you need to gather, you can ensure that Footprints will capture that information and display only the relevant info. If I said database services, then I'm probably going to want to pick some info, and if I picked other DB in this case, I'm going to have to choose what that other DB is, right? Supply it. What other thing are we working on here for database services? And clearly, if I pick a different category, say, nah, Greg's help really needs to be desktop support with his laptop, and it's one of our enterprise applications that we're looking on. Now, do I have to send a hot fix to one of those? Because my enterprise apps, maybe they're the ones that we built ourselves. So do we have a hot fix that we need to put out to make our app continue to work? Display whatever information is necessary back to your agents and technicians, and don't display things to your customers that you don't want them to see, like this particular field here, right? Any field that you don't want your customers to interact with when they use the product, I'm going to have my customers report an incident now instead of my technician. Notice that their version of the incident form looks just a little different. We don't have any of this data really appearing the same way for my technicians. It's sort of the ultimate in having a blank form or a Word document where you have a section that says for office use only. Right? In Footprints, that for office use only is really hidden. The customer never sees those fields. They're not displayed. You don't have to read them and go, I can still see them. Footprints make sure that you don't display any of that. So, of course, that field is not going to be available to my customer because I didn't wish to include it. Easy enough. Don't add it to the form, and it won't become a part of it. And for my customer, capturing information about how this is impacting them, what their issue obviously is they titled it, and you can see it's required. It's kind of turned pink with a little bang next to it over here. So it is a required field. They have to fill it in. And customers who don't fill that in aren't going to be allowed to save their requests. In this way, you can make sure and you can dictate when field information is required based on your process needs. So nobody will be getting a ticket with blank information in it because you've now made those fields mandatory or required to have to fill them in. Hey, I can't do my job and it's only affecting me. So it helps me understand the priority of the request, right? Only me, not as widespread as it could be. It's not burning down the entire building, just me. However, I am dead in the water. And depending on who I am, I may have elevated privileges in terms of priorities, right? If I'm at the airport, I know I want to go through the line first. So I'm looking to prioritization on my request. But by asking customers these kinds of questions, we're not really hinting at anything other than, hey, you tell me how big it is, and can you tell me how this affects you? And now they can say things in symptomatic form. Hey, something isn't working, Doc. It hurts when I do this, right? And I can't do what? I can't print. I can't connect to the internet. Obviously, your choices go here. But Footprints lets you ask and query of your customers the info that you need to make sure these processes get managed correctly. And if it's not something that they want that isn't working correctly, but something new, now this changes into an I want field. And you can say, hey, I need some software installed. Yes, I need Visio. Remember, incidents are really just service requests for break-fix services. So you can easily have that information managed all in one form and one request type for your customers if you'd like. And it's very easy to determine that this is, I need something new, not a break-fix request versus something is broken. It is a break-fix request, right? Now, all of this functionality that you create inside of Footprints, from accessing the service catalog for your customer like this, right, giving them access to the specific services you as a company offer, or giving them access to your knowledge base so that they can drill into the kinds of knowledge that you have and self-serve if you need to. All of that functionality for your customers or for your technicians, all of the ability to construct these different workspaces, manage changes, even the ability, of course, to relate these tickets to others, right? My incident may be related to an ongoing problem with email, in which case we can choose to investigate that issue as a part of a problem request. Or maybe my incident is caused by a change that happened, so I want to link to an existing change request. Hey, you know what? That reboot of the email server that we did here, that's probably the one. So I'll go ahead and link to that. This may be why this incident happened. He can't get access to his email. Or maybe I just need to create the change request from the incident and say, yes, we're going to go do change work because this incident exists. All of that functionality is part of what Footprints gives you through its administrative capability. And all of this capability was actually set up by me by using a business process. This is the administrative area in Footprints. It doesn't really look like the admin area in most tools. It's kind of friendly and bright and easy to see, big blobby icons. They wanted to make sure you could gain access to its power and that it wasn't intimidating, because even though it's got a lot of power under the hood, we don't need to have it flex its muscles so it looks that way, right? I created all my functionality by using a business process. Now, you can build a help desk, a simple workspace like that to capture all of your help desk type work. And these are those little factories I was talking about, right? I need a factory for managing my help desk tickets. Great, here it is along with an address book. Or maybe I need a factory that manages human resource requests. So I can build one of those right as out-of-box content. I chose to build a factory that manages all IT service management. So it's like a multi-building factory where I have different buildings that all relate to each other, different functionalities from my service desk to change management, my service portfolio and service catalog, and managing my knowledge, and the ability to manage my configuration items in my CMDB, as well as managing my corporate address book. And if I click continue here and say, well, I don't need you to build a new corporate address book, I've already got one, we'll just use one of my existing ones. You can have as many address books, by the way, as you'd like, internal and external customers, for example. If I click create, Footprints is going to build everything. in about 6 minutes time. And it'll give us the points of discussion that we've had on our call so far today. So you can certainly use out-of-box content and footprints as your starting place, or you can choose to simply build your workspaces from scratch right from the beginning. Footprints will add a few fields to that workspace for the title and for the status, etc. And you can decide whether you want to keep those or not. But the rest of the fields and the rest of the functionality in that factory will then be yours. It's like an empty factory. They give you doors and windows in it and ways to get in or out, and you decide what fixtures go inside and what the process is going to be. In V12, for those of you who have used earlier versions, you always had the ability in old versions of the product to be able to create a workspace as a copy of another workspace. So that's a good thing, right? Because you don't want to have to replicate the same good functionality a bunch of times if you're building out similar factories for different people. But in version 12, you can actually create workspaces in totally different environments. I could build the workspace for you on my version of Footprints here on my laptop. I could send you the XML file. You could browse for it from your email after you've saved it, right? I could email it to you. And you can upload that XML file and have my workspace in your instance of Footprints. Very, very different capabilities to what you used to have in the old versions of the product. So it's really grown up a lot too from earlier versions and earlier iterations, and the ability to copy workspaces means if other folks build something that you like, hey, we've already got a factory floor layout that looks great. I'm going to use their factory floor layout. Why do I need to build one myself? No, we need to reinvent the wheel. Then you can tweak it to match your business. Hey, it should be in our factory colors, right? Or use our factory terminologies. But in the end, these workspaces can then become yours, even if they're built on a completely different version of Footprints. Note to self, these workspaces would not include the tickets when you brought them over, only the actual structure, right, of the workspace. It wouldn't produce all the factory pallets of output. It would simply be the machinery inside that lets you produce that output consistently. And you can build workspaces that do anything, right? Notice I called one of them a factory. You can do facilities or case management, fraud case management, engineering, communications, change management, legal investigations, human resources. Workspaces are indeed the kind of be-all, end-all Swiss Army knife of functionality, because you don't buy modules for this in Footprints. You simply stand up a new workspace like I was showing you earlier. Build a new one, it'll add the fields for you, and you're good to go. You can then create the rest of yours. And if I go into my corporate services workspace here, you see I have a collection of other workspaces within it. Each of these forms is actually its own little sub-factory, its own sub-processing unit that allows me to create any sort of problem management process versus my service request process that I'd like, each with its own form, each with its own workflow, yet still allowing me to share data amongst them because they're all underneath the same factory roof. And that way, when I'm working on my incident workspace and want to build it to suit, make it look the way I want to, I simply click inside of the incident management area, and I'm able to administer the entire tool from here, setting up what my agent form looks like, or my customer form, or for those of you with dumb smartphones, maybe you're still browsing the web on a jitterbug, right? You can still view Footprints pages even on that, because we can serve up a page that is just HTML that even older handheld devices can use. Anybody who's using a modern handheld device, meaning your iPhones, iPads, what have you, Android devices that you happen to own, you can do everything you want to in Footprints right from that product. You do not need an app. You don't need a special kind of browser. You can just log in right from your Android tablet and administer Footprints just like I am here on my laptop. The only difference is the size of the screen, because Footprints will render it very cleanly. It's HTML5. It'll push out nice. Now, create your own fields, any kinds. You can see I have all my fields for this workspace here. Very easy to add brand new fields to the system. Type the field name, pick the type of field you want to add from a great list of all the field types that folks use on forms, right? And then decide whether it's mandatory or not, whether it has a default value, whether people see help text when they hover over it, etc. Creating these fields on the form means that you now have the ability to put them out on that form. So if I want my agents to have information in a certain place, you can see I can design the entire form that the agents interact with from here, laying out the fields, creating the sections that I want to create right here, adding a new section. And you can have as many of these, of course, as you'd like. I put my new section here. It's at the bottom. I'll drag it up a little bit so we can see it. And now I can just take the fields that I've created and add them to my section as I want, placing them wherever I would like to. on the form so that I can gain access to even information that might be common across all my workspaces, right? No matter where I drag these fields and place them on the code, or on the form, excuse me, I'm not doing this with code, right? Nobody's scripting. I'm not contacting my DBAs. I can easily arrange the number of columns on this page and say that's a 2-column wide field and make the entire page 4 columns if I'd like. So FootPrints gives you great flexibility when it comes to creating the functionality in it. All done point and click. No need to know how to spell SQL or DBA or Java or any of those terms, because FootPrints lets you do all this point and click. Even business rules and automations in FootPrints are done in the same way, so that when I am working on my incident management area and would like to set up workflow or would like to set up automations so that things happen automatically, people get notified or tickets get assigned when they need, business rules in FootPrints allow me to do all of that functionality, setting priorities, setting notifications if tickets aren't closed in time, changing the color of the issues if they're critical so that they go red, or any other functions. And that is all done to a point-and-click interface as well. So that if I create a rule that's supposed to take an action against a ticket, maybe after the ticket's been saved, name the rule, describe the rule, decide when it runs. Every workspace, every factory has its own calendars, so they can run on multiple work schedules. That way everybody can run on their own support hours, even if different groups in your company are using FootPrints. Each one can have their own support hours, their own terms, their own workflows. Set up the triggers by pointing and clicking. Yes, I want you to look after save, and I also might want you to check these tickets every 15 minutes, so I'll add that as another possible option. Time-based, we look every 15 minutes. Decide what other criteria has to be on the record, right? Maybe the ticket has to be old. Hey, if the ticket is aging and getting too old, 5 days old, I probably want it to be a part of this rule and notify someone. And then just pick what the action is going to be, and that can be anything from creating new tickets to sending emails, changing the assignment to adding values. Mathematics can be done. You can even have FootPrints run external actions via execution of a script as a result of a rule. So business rules and workflow are the 2 functionalities in FootPrints that allow you to drill really into any kind of business need you have. Because between the ability to create that business function, right, those business rules that we created, and the ability to create workflows inside of FootPrints, workflows are actually visual pictures that represent what you can do. Right? So when you think of a workflow, people create them in Visio lots of times. Visio is a good place for workflow. But FootPrints lets you create an image that is going to be representative of that, and it's gathering all the elements of that workflow so that it can display them. This is the current workflow that I have set up for managing incidents inside of my incident workspace. Notice that it starts as a request, can move to in progress, can also move to completed. It can go back and forth between these statuses. The arrows go both ways. It cannot be resurrected from closed. That's good. That's good practice, right? We don't want our zombie tickets running around eating our data, so you never want to reopen a closed ticket in any circumstance. And FootPrints allows you to easily determine that. The arrow is pointing one way. If I dragged it this way too, now I could go either direction and I could open a ticket that was closed already. Not something you would typically ever want to do, right? So I can undo that move and say, nah, I don't want that to happen. Or I can easily add authorization states anywhere along the way. Maybe I need someone to authorize the fact that it's been completed. If this is an approval state, FootPrints can quickly add approved and rejected as an output from this. Hey, you could approve it and say, good, it's fixed. Hey, you could reject it and say, bad, it's not fixed. If it's rejected, I'm just going to move it to closed. If it's approved, I may also move it to closed, but after I send a notification to the customer. Right? So in this case, I may choose this little arrow and say, yeah, you approved the request. Right here, I'm going to add a business rule that notifies you and says, thank you very much. Here's a survey and a prize, or whatever we want to send them. So workflow and FootPrints are the train tracks that you lay so that your process is followed. The statuses don't happen before their time. Any status that you want to, or any number of them, can become authorization statuses, so you can approve anything in FootPrints that you want, whether that's a new day off, a new job, a new keyboard, a new piece of software, or maybe just an actual change request that you're managing inside of your IT infrastructure. FootPrints lets you create multiple workflows. There's no charge for those either, so build as many as you want. And that way, every ticket that comes through can be managed appropriately based on the nature of the request that's being handled that way. So all this flexibility in footprints means that you can take your own actions. You can point and click your way to designing the functionality you want. And it also means that because you put in what you want to put in, you can get out what you want to get out. You can search for everything and find all of your data in footprints. You don't need a DBA to do this. If I wanted to look for those email issues that may have existed inside of my incident workspace, right? Notice that I have workspaces here for all kinds of functionalities. I'm going to search incidents for this. If I want to just do a quick down and dirty search, find all the tickets that are related to email, it brings them back. Some of them are critical, colored red, just like that rule is supposed to do that we looked at. So footprints can quickly find details. If you need to find them rapidly, right, just give me a keyword or a ticket number, or as you can see when you hover over this, it gives you help for any way you want to structure that simple search that you'd like. Now, you can also construct advanced searches, and advanced searches really let you name your search, share your search, put some notes in so that you remember what your search was for 3 years from now, right, because you'll have the tool for a while, and when you name this thing new search, you won't know what the heck that means. You can know where to search. Every container in footprints is available, right? Everything is here to search in. So you can pick all of them or none of them or any of them in combination, or just search for incidents or problems or changes or facilities requests. Anything you want to search all at the same time, you can look across everything you manage as an organization. And there are very few places in the company where we get to see across everything, because sometimes we tend to buy lots of point solutions instead of just one place where we can fold everything together. Footprints becomes that one place. You can search for any conditions you want to. Every field you've created, everything you said was important can be searched for. So you want to find all those old tickets, right? Tickets that have got old or beyond a certain number of days. And I'm just going to do this quickly, guys, so that we can still take your questions. 5 days, 9 minutes would make it an odd number. 5 days, 9 minutes old. Display the fields you want to as a part of your search. Most people will add things like record number and title and priority and good stuff like that. You can add, obviously, any fields you want, from the cleverly named custom field 41 to the really useful I can't field. Any fields that you want to add, just double click them, easy to do. If you'd like to make a certain field, you know, first in the list, drag it up to where you want it, like first in the column, let go, you're good. Then publish it as a query, and you can now use it as the basis for a report. So you don't have to do any queries in SQL. And they will eventually come up with a mobile app for pushed content. You do not need a mobile app to use the tool. You do not need the mobile app to access your tickets. This is not going to be a client. It's really intended as, hey, here's some canned content like searches. Maybe you own a process for one of those searches that you'd like to look at. Preview the results, let you see all the information. If you save this search, you can use it over and over again. Run it all you want, but it's also part of the reporting capability in Footprints. And reporting in Footprints has changed some for those of you used to older versions. It used to be a little drop down you would click over here instead of reports. So it's changed a little bit, now called Service Analytics. And also in version 12, when you do reporting, you don't have to write the search again because you've just written one in your searches. Right? You can manage all of your searches that you've ever created, so you can still go after them and use them any way you'd like. But those searches become queries so that when you're working in your reports, all of your metrics reports that you're used to, right? Some people think of these as out of box. Remember, no custom designed solution like this, no solution built is going to know your business requirements. So out of box reports aren't going to be aimed at your specific needs. They're just going to be kind of generic outputs, right? And Footprints lets you do exactly that. How long does it take me to go from status A to status B when I define what status A and status B is for any process? Those kinds of reports fit everywhere, and that's why these are your typical ticket management reports, including watch lists, so you can know whether the change you did to Citrix last weekend was effective or not. You can do service portfolio reporting or any other kind of reports you want to build, right? And building these reports really takes you into the report writer so that you can build them, even dashboards. We'll talk about that as well. Any report you build, whether it's a custom report, Swiss Army knife, any kind of thing you want, or very specific for tracking the time spent on tickets, even if the person spending time wasn't assigned, they were simply given permission to access that ticket. If they spend a minute in it, it's going to be recorded in Footprints. Any reports you build will come out in the list of reports. So I can see I have some ticket management here, some activity reports. I have a couple of average age reports, state 1 versus state 2. I don't have any service portfolio reports, didn't build them. I do have some custom reports in the system. And no matter which report you enter into, Footprints lets you take a peek at those, brings up the report writer, and therefore lets you administer those reports as you need. Now, any report you write can become a part of your dashboard in Footprints. So you can create dashboards out of a pool, really, of reports. Any report you build will be added to the pool if you choose to. And that means when you go to construct dashboards, you can have a rich pool of resource reports that you can then fold into any dashboard you want. And when you build dashboards, as you can see, they can be private for just you, or you can share them with others, display them on a big screen TV someplace so that you can see it and everyone else can as well. And make that dashboard up out of any of these reports that you choose to add. I just click them. They're going to be added to the dashboard. That lets you get cross-functional looks at your entire organization's processes instead of just a drilled-in focus. But you also obviously can take all of your incident reports and put them on a single dashboard, and all of your problem reports and put them on one, so that you can build reports and dashboards that are applicable for your organization. And to add them to a dashboard, you check that box. It says dashboard. Check the box, add them to the dashboard, done. If you want them to be available for use on any home screen in Footprints, add them there by saying ServiceCore. And for those of you who use older versions of the product, you know that we couldn't really put many reports on your home screens. So I couldn't go into Footprints of Yore and say, hey, I would like a report in my address book that shows me incidents by company. You couldn't do that in the old versions. Now, any report that I choose to share with Footprints itself can be visible anywhere that I want to use it. So extremely flexible now the product is. Based on one of my saved searches, all the information that I chose to gather from that search is available. So all my columns here, everything from those records that I searched for is here. I've got some checkboxes here that allow me to add those columns into my output. And when I output the report, for those of you on older versions of Footprints, the reports weren't necessarily pretty. They were very functional, but they didn't necessarily look glamorous. Some of you may have used Excel to manipulate your data later. The reports are much cleaner now. You don't need Excel to be able to make them look nice. They output as PDF or Excel if you'd like. So you can output as a direct Excel file now, or PDF those so that you can have a nice clean PDF static output. But folks who exported to Excel did so because they couldn't do pivot tables before in Footprints. Now you can. That ability exists right in the product. You, of course, cannot create gauge charts directly in Excel. Right? There is no gauge chart that exists for you to pick from, yet gauge charts are the best way to know if your process is working. Aggregating data is something that DBAs often get involved in, especially if you're doing distinct counts of items in the database. Footprints can find those for you without having to get your DBAs involved. Grouping or filtering, sorting or changing layouts, even doing your own formula. All something you can now do in Footprints. So I can add my own columns in, make columns added together if I want, do moving averages, whatever I'd like to do as a calculation, and then send that report as a PDF. I can even schedule the report to run so that it delivers to whomever I want it to, whenever I would like. So Footprints really is an end-to-end solution, ITSM solution that is kind of gone beyond ITSM. You can manage literally any workflow process in it you'd like. From IT tickets of change, incident, problem, all the typical ITIL stuff. We're ready to roll with that. But also any of your other blank management functions that you're passing around via SneakerNet or via email or via Word document. We can manage all of that stuff inside of Footprints too. So you don't need to have all those separate solutions in the organization, just one to get a hold of these processes and more. And of course, at Flycast, we have the ability to help you get these tools and your processes in a row. So we would love the opportunity to be able to help you with either of them. Now, Rich, I want to turn it over to you. I know that you have some of those biggest challenges, and you had identified a couple, 3 of them, sounds like. Why don't you give me those challenges, and we'll see if we can speak to them.
We will. Okay, now the first challenge, actually, like I said in the beginning, comes from Chris from Sturm Foods out of Wisconsin. And Chris wants to know, creating consistent tools from an extremely varied customer base.
Oh, gotcha. Well, Footprints, because of its workspace strategy, and I think I know where Chris is going on this, because of the workspace strategy in Footprints, right, because of the fact that I can create workspaces to manage literally any processes I want, right, I have some buttons that I've included up here to create some of those requests, but I can use Footprints to create any kind of function, right, bug tracking requests or corporate security investigations, or biomedical maintenance, right? We have one organization that uses Footprints and its CMDB to manage and maintain all their biomedical equipment with both the tickets and the record of the biomed equipment itself stored in the CMDB. So with Footprints diversity of workspaces, those process factories, we have folks that are kind of the ultimate in diversity. Colleges, right? Major colleges love to use Footprints because every school under that university's umbrella wants their own ticketing system. They have their own deans, they have their own little fiefdoms that they set up, and they want their own way of looking at their own tickets. The college, of course, wants to be able to see everybody's way under one fell swoop. So even though the College of Fine Arts wants to look at stuff differently from the College of Computer Science underneath my university, Footprints lends itself to that because each workspace can be tailored to suit the College of Computer Science and the College of Fine Arts and everyone else with their own look and feel. And that way they can manage their workflow to their needs, diverse needs at that, and still have everything rolled up underneath one tool so that you can still have a catbird seat with everything that's going on inside the organization. Hopefully that'll help cover that for Chris.
Okay.
All right. Next, what were your other ones?
Next one, Mark Wood of American Public University in West Virginia. Could you highlight some of the added functionality in V12 versus the most recent V11 version?
Oh, sure. Version 12 is really a remake, right? Version 11 had been in production, obviously, for many, many years, right, as version 11, 10, 9, 8. All of those versions of Footprints were sort of end of life, if you want to look at it that way, because they were built on an architecture, a Perl-based architecture, that both Numara at the time and BMC subsequently after purchasing them knew had to come to an end, right? Because they weren't going to be able to grow that solution and its capabilities into the kinds of functionalities that they needed in the future. And that meant they needed a way to really take on new capabilities in Footprints. So V12 is an object-oriented solution now. All of the pieces of the puzzle used to be focused on just workspaces. But for those of you who are former Footprints owners, you'll notice that there is no workspace choice for me up here anymore. And I'm not driven into a single workspace to do my work. I'm allowed now to roam, right? All the information I need is brought back to me. So I don't have to go to the mountain. It's returned to where I am. All of the functionality administratively, for those of you, again, who used Footprints before, if I left and went into admin land to do my administrative work, that meant that the tickets that I was working on would not be parked right where they are now, right? Because I left a function and went to a different one. So it was kind of single-threaded in the older versions. Version 12 has made that much more of a multi-threaded function. So you have an object-oriented solution now that is multi-threaded so that you can continue multiple facets of work without having to leave one workspace and go into another one and therefore leave all of your stuff that you're working on behind. Almost like little bunkers underground, right? Leave one bunker, go into another underground bunker, isolated from the rest. Footprints V12 allows all of that to flow together and allows you to bring all of that information back to you on your console instead of you having to drill for it. And because V12's point-and-click interface, of course, we've always had that point-and-click ability, but because V12 has made it uniform, it is now consistent how everything in the product gets managed. If I'm creating new workspaces, I'm going to be taken through the same functionality as if I were creating a brand new service portfolio in the tool. So the tool administers in a consistent way, which means all of the features and functions now are, even though more powerful than they used to be, right? Because you can now create more rules, more business functions than you ever could. You can create workflows that you never could build before. So all of that functionality means you need to be able to access it. They've made it much more consistent across the board to access that new capability in the product, just so that you as an end user can still gain access to those administrative functions and make the tool into what you'd like. So from the code base that it's written on, to the fact that the workspaces are all brought to you, from the fact that it is now multi-threaded, to the fact that I can really interact with any part of the tool directly without having to worry about leaving one workspace and move to another, means V12 has grown up quite a bit as a solution, yet still keeps the Footprints workspaces, still ingests emails automatically, and still lets me work in the tool through that point-and-click interface. Was there one more? probably have time for one more, Rich?
We have one more. I even have another one after this one if we have a minute
Oh,
or
okay,
so.
good.
But this one's
Sure.
from Eric of University of Nebraska, of course, in Nebraska, and he's concerned about migrating from 11 to 12.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said in that earlier comment, 11 is on a different platform. So it was written in Perl. A lot of people are like, really, Perl on the web? Because for those of you who know the language, quite an older scripting language and not necessarily web-friendly, right? But they'd found a way to make it work and had been using it in all prior versions of Footprints. Once they got to that need for a new platform, they knew they were going to have a conundrum because all versions of Footprints have been upgradable in place since the beginning. Right? You just install a new installer, it upgrades over the top of the old Perl code, and you're done. Away you go. And Numara felt that was very important. BMC felt it was important when they acquired Numara. So even though V12 was in production when BMC acquired them and had been for about a year or so, BMC continued to produce what was called the migration tool, right? It was Numara's idea. And they knew they needed a way to get people over from the old version to the new one, even though the code bases were completely different. Right? There is no one-to-one translation from some of the functions in version 11 and earlier into version 12. So the migration tool was designed as kind of a two-step process. The first one is it evaluates your existing installation, and it verifies whether or not it's up to snuff, meaning are you on the latest version of version 11, because it needs a known code base, right? It can't work from like 11.1 when the latest version is 11.6. It needs to know the code base and the changes to work from. And then it will assess your system and see if you've made any non-GUI based changes to it. Have you injected Java? Have you used cascaded style sheets? You know, in other words, have you done programming in Footprints outside of the GUI to make some of the functionalities work for your company? Those things are going to be evaluated, sniffed out, and you'll be notified of them as a part of the migration advisor's output, where it tells you these things won't be migrated, these things could break the migration or not work, right? Those are all things that you may have done custom. Things inside of Footprints, though, in V11 don't necessarily have a one-to-one relationship either. For example, in version 12, there's no such a thing really as an auto-assign rule. That's done through a business rule. Same thing now in V12 with auto-field rules. Those rules are all managed through the business rule mechanism. So since there's no one-to-one relationship, rules that were set up in the old version won't come across, and you would need to recreate them. So the migration manager is going to basically tell you these functionalities you've added yourself outside of the GUI, they probably need to be turned off or you may not get anything to come across. Other things like those rules don't have an equivalent, so V12 wouldn't be able to build them. Your escalation rules that you built in earlier versions would come across, but they would be turned off. And not all of those will. Ones that do external actions, right, take actions outside of Footprints because that mechanism is slightly different now. Those rules that you created, those escalations wouldn't come across. So the migration tool is really perfect for people who want and love their existing version of the workspaces they have and would never, ever change them. Right? I don't want to ever make this look different, even though I have a more powerful palette to use, right? Even though I can make it look and feel and behave better now. I don't have to use those shortcuts or workarounds to make things work. For those of you who love, love, love your existing system, that migration mechanism will bring all your workspaces. The tickets can be migrated after that. But it'll bring the shells, the constructs really of all of your workspaces, minus a few rules based on what the migration manager tells you you're using. And then all those workspaces are XML files that you can upload into version 12 and you'll recreate them that way. You can't pick and choose which workspaces you get them all, any of those workspaces that are not deleted in your old version of Footprints. And then you can migrate out the tickets, right? They export out of your old version of the product using administration system workspace and then choose to export. Export your tickets to CSVs, re-import them right inside of version 12. In fact, inside of version 12 in the admin area, there is a full import capability. So if you simply choose that and decide what you'd like to do, import your CIs, your tickets, your user accounts, import your knowledge, anything you need to be able to import. So then you can import your tickets and away you go. That's kind of how you would get to version 12 using the migration tool. Not using the migration tool, saying, you know, I would like a chance to start again. Then we simply work the workspaces up from scratch in V12 using its design mechanisms, using its capability, its power. And what you get is, really more flexibility, right? A design that may be more akin to what you were hoping to get the first time, right? Or maybe you've designed it in a way that was really simple and quick and down and dirty the first time, and now you would like to extend that capability. If you find yourself in that boat, getting to V12 is probably a better choice if you simply say, I'm just going to make it V2.0, start from scratch. We can still copy your old tickets if you want, but note that they will never get more perfect than they are now. Right? Moving them to the other tool won't change the data that was gathered the first time around, won't make it look better, right? So you can always mine the data out of your existing version of the product. Obviously, there are mitigating factors for that. Some folks don't want to leave the old VMware or whatever server they have it on up at all. But you could easily use your existing version to mine your old tickets out of without having to migrate stuff. And the big advantage of not having to migrate is you don't have to build a workspace that looks just like your old workspace just to house tickets that you already have housed in your old version, right? So you have to kind of decide what's the most important. But we can get you there in either case, whichever one you choose. I will tell you this, probably 98% of our customers choose to start over in V12 just because of the new capabilities and they'd like to take advantage. But some folks take the other route because they have workspaces they love and they would just, rather than recreate them at all, they'll just take them and build them up inside of V12 using its capability and leveraging that migration tool. So I know that was a little long-winded, but hopefully that helped cover the answer in the question.
And one last one, I don't even know if you have time to answer this one or not because we've really gone past our time, but Connie was just curious about the service catalog. Any improvements or the same or whatever?
Well, it definitely changes, right? The service catalog, just like the knowledge base in the older version of the product was, well, the service catalog in the old version of the footprints was done in the CMDB. So when you managed your CMDB, you had within it a service catalog that was a part of that CMDB, and some of the CIs you created were services, and you identified them as such, and then it would display them in kind of a grid view. In V12, the CMDB is not the location of the service catalog. Now, you can get into some discussions about whether or not it belongs in the CMDB or whether or not it belongs in the service portfolio, but technically a CMDB can be either monolithic, right, all data in one place, or it can be federated. CI data can live in more than one place, and I can manage them both from the same umbrella. So in this case, they're choosing a more federated model for configuration items, having the real CIs, right, the actual typically hardware software components that deliver a service listed here. And the virtual components of that CMDB, things like the service portfolio, the service catalog, all of your contract information, etc., managed inside of a separate object, service portfolio, that is still directly related to the CMDB, making it more of a federated model. So that service portfolio has changed, right? Just the model of it has changed. You now get it as a part of V12, whether you have the CMDB in your earlier versions or not. It's going to show up here. But it also changed because of the way you can set up categories for those services and the way that information can be displayed back to your customer. The service catalog, obviously much cleaner looking than it used to be in the older versions of the product. The categories here that have been added here, these are inside of my knowledge base categories, but they work exactly the same as they do inside the service catalog, as you can see. Drilling back through my breadcrumbs allows me to bring focus on the high-level services that I'm offering. And these services, of course, are still tailorable based on the audience in question. So if I need different people to see different services, I can just have them view the same service catalog and see different levels of service depending on who they are. So there's a little more flexibility to be had as far as how those services are displayed. Definitely more in terms of how you interact with the product, because drilling into those specific categories of service allows me to see the service that I want and then bring up the order form just like I was on, kind of like I was on Amazon with a picture of the product and the write-up of the product and how long it takes to get it and all that stuff that you'd see. And then you say, yeah, I want to order one. I want to get me one of those. When you say that on Amazon, it brings up an order form and says, hey, I've added this to your cart. Is this what you want to order? Yes, this is what I want to order. And you say the request, right? Place your order and away it goes. Now, you don't have to see where it lives behind the scenes. Amazon takes care of that. And just like in the same way in Footprints, this ticket goes through whichever process you need it to. Does it need to be authorized by a manager or whomever? So the service catalog has gotten more robust, easier to configure. It is its own separate object inside of the tool now rather than living inside of the CMDB. And its overall ability to be interacted with, depending on who you are, means that you have finer detail over which services are technical versus which services are non-technical, right? Customer-facing services are non-technical, non-customer-facing services maybe your technical ones, all within that same service catalog. Plus, as you can see, easier to display and work with. So some major advantages, I think, in how the service catalog works and its flexibility. And we're just about up against it here.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely ran out of time, and I do appreciate your time today, Greg. I know how busy you are, especially at the time of the year it is, and I appreciate every one of you that attended today and your questions. We do appreciate your challenges. It gets us to appreciate what our customers are looking at, what potential customers may be looking at as far as the tool is concerned. Any questions that you have that we're not able to get to today, please email me at rich.longo@flycastpartners.com, or you can call 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. Give us about 5 business days to get those questions answered, folks. Sometimes we get a little bit of an onslaught there, and we definitely want to get to every one of them and get you the appropriate answers. So please go ahead and send us your questions. We'll get the answers for you. Once again, thank you again for attending.